Hey there, everybody. Thanks for joining us on the Saturday Night Hockey Show. I, of course, am Dave Valente. Travis Aurednik is not in just yet, so it's me going solo here for a little bit. Thanks for joining us tonight. So we are into the very end of round one and the start of round two tonight. Tonight we have the game six between the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Montreal Canadiens. If Toronto wins, that effectively ends round one. If Montreal wins, we go to Game 7 on Monday night, and I'm here for that because that will be awesome. But I'm going to go ahead and start talking about some of the series that we've had going on so far this year, and talk about what we're going to see in round two. So let's go ahead and drop right into it. All right, so uh, the Western Division didn't was not a big surprise of what we saw coming out of the Western Conference. Um, Colorado did sweep out St. Louis fairly efficiently, and they've been off since Sunday, I believe, Saturday or Sunday, the 23rd, I believe, was when that series ended. Vegas had a much tougher time with Minnesota. They had to go the full seven. Last night was game seven. Uh, Vegas did emerge a no, I'm sorry, 6-2 winner in that game to win the series in front of their home crowd in Vegas. And it was a very entertaining series, much tougher than I thought it would be. I thought Vegas was the stronger team, and they did prove it in this game and in a couple games where they really limited the chances um, that Minnesota had. Game two in particular, Minnesota came out. They got a 2-goal lead, and they seemed to kind of sit on that. And Vegas limited their chances the entire rest of the game. I remember looking at some point in the third period, and they were still like just over 10 shots for the period. So or for the game. So and last night was another example. Minnesota hung with them for a little more than half the game. They kept it tight. It was 2-2 in the middle of the third or the middle of the second. Uh, Vegas did end up getting a late goal in the second to give them a 3-2 lead, and they just kind of pulled away in the third as Minnesota took chances to try and tie up the game. So, it's now we're going on to the series that we all want to see, which is that Colorado versus Vegas series. But let's talk about what happened in these two series. Um, like for me, uh, the one question I do have going into the next series is Colorado's been off for a week, and Vegas is going to come off of their Game 7 triumph. Um, it is going to be in Colorado, so Vegas does have to travel. But how does that week off affect Colorado? Do they have some rust in game one? Yeah, Vegas did have the longer series, but um, they're not going to be rusty. We didn't see too many bad injuries coming out of Vegas, so you might have Vegas having a little bit more of an advantage going into game one of that series, and I think this is going to be a tough slog. I think it's going to be probably going to be a 7-game series. I think the times that these teams have played this year, they have been entertaining. They've been tough slogs. They've been uh, you know, knock down, drag out fights. They've been playoff games in the regular season, so I'm really excited to see this series. Um, I think it would have had a little less luster had Minnesota pulled off the Game 7 upset. But one of the questions we also need to answer is that Nazem Kadri asked for a review of his suspension. So he served I believe 2 games of his suspension, an 8-game suspension uh, at the end of this series. So game 3 and 4, were first two games of that suspension. He did request a hearing with Gary Bettman. That was done online. I would expect to hear something either today or tomorrow as to whether his suspension gets reduced. I do. I would hate to see it get reduced because I think it was light to begin with, based off of what he did in did to the defenseman for the St. Louis Blues. Let's see. I was surprised that Vegas got pushed to the brink by Minnesota because there was points I was talking about that there were points in those series where that Vegas was pushed by or that they dominated Minnesota, and it wasn't consistent effort throughout that entire series. They're going to need that consistent effort if they're going to knock off Colorado. I give Colorado the advantage in the series. I think it goes seven, but I think Colorado pulls it out and moves on to the next round. But um, it's going to be a wildly entertaining series. This is going to be, I think, as entertaining as the Florida Tampa series was in the first round. Let's take a look at the East. Pittsburgh got knocked off by they were the first seed in the Eastern Division. They were knocked off by the number 4 seed Islanders. Now, this was a surprise to me, how efficiently they knocked out the Penguins in this series. Um, the Islanders came into the playoffs and they were struggling. They were struggling bad. They lost 2 in a row to Buffalo towards the end of the season with a goaltender who had rarely sniffed the AHL, much less the NHL. And it looked like a world beater in 2 games against the Islanders. Islanders really scuffled. They were fighting for first or second in the division as we got into April, and they just really sank. And this series is going to be interesting because as hot as the Islanders were at the beginning of the season, Islanders took 6 of the first 8 from Buffalo before losing those last 2. They took 5 of the first 8 from Boston, their opponents in this series, before Boston won the last 3 in a row. So that late season swoon uh, had me thinking that the Islanders would have struggled against the Penguins and lost that series. But Barry Trotz is a very experienced NHL coach and playoff coach, and got them playing better hockey as they got into this playoff series. They lost or they won game 1, and I think that set the tone for them this first round series. So we'll see what happens. That game starts tonight. Boston swept aside the Capitals. Frankly, I was shocked how little resistance the Capitals gave to the Boston Bruins. That series ended on Sunday, and it was it was never close in that series. And the Caps had that game 1 overtime victory, but the Boston Bruins just looked so much better throughout the rest of the series, that the Caps were able to get a game or two into overtime was remarkable, because as the series moved on, Boston really asserted its dominance. So going into this series, the questions that I have would be: can the Islanders defense shut down the perfection line? They did a great job against Crosby and Gensel and Rust. Can they do it again against the perfection line? Because they were the Caps had no answer for them. Now I know Barry Trotz has a much better defensive system than the Capitals do. So this series, I really do give the advantage to Boston because I think they were playing better hockey going into it. But again, Barry Trotz's experience in that defensive system, I think is an equalizer. I am leaning at this point to saying Boston in 6 in this series, but we'll see. This will be an interesting series for every. It's Not my favorite series out of the 4 potential series that we have going on right now. Um, I think there's going to be, better series out of the other 3 series that are going, especially that Colorado, Vegas, and, one of the next series that we'll talk about. Uh, Let me slide on down to that. This is the Central Division. So we had 2 really good series in the Central Division. Um, and I'm really excited for this series coming up between Carolina and Tampa. This series was very close during the regular season. Um, Carolina won 4, Tampa won 3, and there's overtime loss for Tampa, I believe. Um, and so very, very close series, but now we have to toss in Nikita Kucherov into the mix, who came into the last series like he had not missed the entire season, and yeah, a lot of Panther fans are still aggravated by that. Um, with the 2 series that were completed, the questions that I have are, Carolina had much more difficult time with Nashville than we anticipated. That was the 1-4 matchup. Carolina, you know, one of the top teams in the league, and they really struggled. I mean, this was a couple of overtime bounces from going completely the opposite direction. They had those last 2 games kind of fluky goals going in for Carolina to win those last 2 games. Um, UC Saros really picked up his game. I know people who've watched this show before, uh, back in early March, February, uh, heard us pretty much bury the Nashville Predators. They were off to an awful start. Neither Saros nor Pecorine could stop a beach ball, but they turned their season around, and they held off a late charge by the Dallas Stars. They acquitted themselves quite well in this series. And people who are talking about blowing up the roster in February and March are not so much talking about that anymore. So we will see what happens with this next season for Nashville. Of course, Travis's favorite player, Philip Tomasino, will be probably on the opening night roster, but we don't know. Um, and then the other series, man, that was the most entertaining series that did not go 7 that I've seen in recent years. That the Florida Panthers gave Tampa everything they had, um, and it was probably one of the most physical first round series that I've ever seen. I was almost, I felt bad that it didn't go 7. That series deserved a 7th game, but Andre Vasilevsky was lights out in game number 6, and really held Florida to nothing in that game. So, um, but with this series that we're going to see now between Tampa and Carolina, I think these are of the 4 series that we've got potentially. The Carolina, Tampa, and the Colorado, Vegas are really the premier series that will be coming up. Um, it's a very, 2 really top flight teams here. Rob Brindamore has done a remarkable job in bringing Carolina as a franchise back from really kind of irrelevancy over the previous almost decade after they won the Stanley Cup to, being one of the elite teams in the league. And then, of course, Tampa with theirs, being the defending Stanley Cup champion, um, and having an elite level team for the last 5 years. This is going to be a battle royale, and I'm so excited for this series. Um, let's see. So one thing I think with the Tampa Florida series, I think if Spencer Knight had actually played all 7 games or all 6 games, that this series would have gone 7, and quite possibly, uh, Florida could have won this series. That kid is, amazing. He was in tough in game 6, but I think that, his ability and the lack of ability that we saw from Sergei Bobrovsky and, Chris Drieger, in this series, I think he could have held the ground in game 1 and preserved Florida's lead in game 1. So you flip that game, and we're talking about a game 7, and, this that kid is the future for the Panthers. They have some decisions to make about, how do you get rid of a $10 million contract of Sergei Bobrovsky? Because this is 2 seasons where he's had moments, but he's been real pedestrian in both seasons. So I'm wondering what happens with Sergei Bobrovsky. It's would be an incredibly expensive compliance buyout, and that money would sit on. It's 2 years for every year left on the contract. They're in year 8, so 16 years of paying a prorated salary to Sergei Bobrovsky on your salary cap is not what they're looking to do. But they're going to have to trade this contract off and probably take some salary in a flat cap world. Um, but you can't hold back Spencer Knight. And I don't know that Sergei Bobrovsky wants to be the backup to the young phenom. So, um, but anyway, this series between Tampa and Carolina is going to be a knockdown, drag out affair. Um, the big question is, does Kucherov be the deciding factor in the series? With him being not playing any of those games, coming in being an impactful player in the Florida series, now having some games under his belt, does he tip the scales in favor of Tampa? I don't know, but we'll see starting tomorrow, which will be an interesting. Well, I'll be looking forward to seeing that series. And then finally, let's take a look at the Northern Division. Of course, we're talking Tampa and Montreal, which will be launching in about a half hour, like 40 minutes now. This is game 6. Uh, Toronto leads 3-2, so they can close it out here in Montreal tonight. And the winner of that series will get the Winnipeg Jets, who pulled off probably the most surprising turn of events with the playoffs this season. The first round sweep of the Connor McDavid juggernaut of the Edmonton Oilers. Now we talked about throughout the season that you know McDavid had basically broke the matrix and just kind of knows how to score at will now. And um, you know you would think that he would have been good to carry the team at least 1 or 2 games. I don't think anybody foresaw a sweep in this series because um, the to keep Connor McDavid down 4 games, and there was a couple of games where he did post multi-point efforts, but one of those games they had a 3-0 lead in the third period and they let it slip away with Winnipeg scoring 3 goals in like 3 minutes in the final 8 minutes of the game, and then snapping off a overtime winner to complete the comeback. That was the first game in Winnipeg, and was just kind of stunning. You're like, wow, the Winnipeg Jets were down and out, and it looked like that the series was going to be a lot tougher for them. Had Edmonton held on and won that game and taken the first game in Winnipeg after Winnipeg had taken the first 2 games in Edmonton. But now we're looking at Winnipeg sweeping the series, getting that big win in Game 3, and then going triple overtime to take out Edmonton in the fourth and final game. So Winnipeg awaits the winner of the Toronto Montreal series. Honestly, I really would love to see Montreal take the game tonight and make Toronto face their demons. It's well known that Toronto's lost the last. Well, they haven't won a first round playoff series since the first the first George W. Bush administration in 2004. So Buffalo's won multiple playoff series even since then. So um, and the last 3 years, it's all been Game 7 heartbreak for uh, Toronto. They're happy that they don't have to play the Bruins, but um, you know, eh, what would be worse, losing to the Bruins or losing to your hated rival of Montreal in the first round, especially when you're the heavy favorite and let's be honest, the much more talented team. Although the emergence of Cole Caulfield, the young rookie phenom that was held out of the lineup for the first 3 or 4 games of this series, and as soon as he gets into the lineup, he's producing. So, including the OT winner in Game 5, or I'm sorry, Game 4, and then Game 5, also contributing. So, um, I am very much looking forward to tonight's game and see if who's going to emerge from that Northern Division. The question that I have here going into the next round, though, is that Winnipeg, they won their series on Wednesday. If this Toronto Montreal series goes 7, that means the earliest that this series could start. I think even if Toronto wins tonight, I don't think this series starts until Wednesday. So they're going to have a week off. Does They were firing on all cylinders? Does that week off cause them to have issues moving forward? Do they have rust going into games 1 or 2? If it's Montreal that moves on, they'll be hosting games 1 and 2. If it's Toronto, they'll be traveling to Toronto for games 1 and 2. Um, the other question is, there's rumors that perhaps Winnipeg, the government there will allow fans into the building. I don't think Toronto is anywhere near that at this point, but will that give Winnipeg some sort of advantage? Um, and if Toronto, let's say Toronto loses this first round series, then we've got all kinds of questions you need to ask. Will who's going to carry the torch forward on this team? Because my guess is if they lose a fourth consecutive first round Game 7 exit uh, to a yeah, Boston was a better team in most of those series, but in this series where this season has been kind of handed to Toronto, uh, my guess is that Kyle Dubas will be fired, and you'll have to replace him. Who replaces Kyle Dubas, and what happens to the team? I don't think you blow it up. That would be stupid, but you've got to address some things, especially in goal. Campbell's looked good on some nights, but then he's, been kind of a sieve other nights. And do they continue forward with just a tandem of Campbell and Frederick Anderson? Frederick Anderson has been kind of a mystery of, why he didn't play the end of the season, and then all of a sudden shows up wanting to be the starter in game 1 and doing a rehab start down in the AHL. And it it's kind of a mystery because they've really invested a lot into Frederick Anderson as their starter, and was kind of the man at the beginning of the season. Yeah, I know that he had an injury issue, but uh, it seemed more of a maneuver to try and get around the salary cap because they had a division well in hand when the injury happened, and they could, use that money that he was earning to go after guys like Marcus Foligno, or not Marcus, Nick Foligno, and other players too. So augment that lineup. So Um, anyway, that's pretty much the look at the playoffs. There's not much to talk about right now. We do have the World Championships going on, and I can look up what's going on with that. Um, the U.S. Really did put a beat down on Canada the other day, but the hard thing with this tournament is that it's not. A lot of players are not really keen on going to this tournament. One, whether it's um, the COVID travel issues, um, but yeah, I mean, you're seeing a mix of American player or NHL players, like Clayton Keller's on the U.S. team, and a few other players, but you're also seeing a ton of former NHLers or NHLers that or Canadian and American players that never really made it in the United States, so they are in the NHL. So they played in Europe over the last few years. Let's see, IIHF, I think is what it is. There we go. Come on, internet's being slow for me. Anyway, um, but yeah, it's been a very entertaining tournament. You Lots of high scores, like Germany beat Italy today. Or no, that was the first game of this tournament. They beat them 9-4. Let's take a look at the standings. There's a lot of teams. So the interesting thing is that last year the World Championship was canceled. It's the first time that it happened. They announced one of the cool things about this tournament is they got relegation. So if you perform badly in this tournament, you will get relegated to the lower divisions and have to fight your way back into it. Now, Canada and the United States usually don't have to worry about that too much, but um, the teams that are some of the you know interesting teams that show up to this. Let me stop this screen. We'll share to give you an idea who's playing in this tournament. There we go. All right. So we've got Group A. It's generally the European division, most of the European division. Slovakia, I guess that's the Russian team. Anyway, yeah, I know Russia's had issues with doping and being able to participate in certain competitions, and I guess that's how they're being designated as the ROC, Russian Olympic Team. You have Switzerland, Czech Republic, Denmark, Sweden, Great Britain, and Belarus. You see, it's been a kind of tough slog for teams like Belarus and Great Britain. Um, and then in Group B, which has the North American teams with some European teams, you've got Finland leading. They're 4-0 and 1-0. So their standing system is far different. You get points for an overtime win. You get 3 points for a win, 2 points for an overtime win, 1 point for a shootout win, and I don't think you get a point for overtime or shootout losses. So um, Finland's 4 wins and an overtime loss. The Team USA's got 4 wins and a loss. They lost to Finland in the first game of the tournament. Kazakhstan surprisingly has won a couple games. They're two wins, 2 overtime wins, and 2 losses against the U.S. and Canada. Germany 3-0-2, but look at Canada. Only have 2 wins in this tournament. They've lost 3 times. They got beat down by the Americans. Uh, last week, and it was like a 5-1 victory for the U.S. in that game. Um, the bottom two teams in each division will go to the relegation round, which means the two teams that perform the best in the relegation round will remain in the upper division of international hockey. The normally, and then the two teams that lose that relegation round will end up being relegated back to Division 1A. But this season, because of the cancellation last year and all the other World Championships being canceled this year, means that all of these teams will return for 2022. So no matter how well you play or how badly you play, um, you'll be around for 2022. So it takes some stress out of the tournament for some of the smaller countries. But if we had the relegation round today, it would be Britain and Belarus versus Norway and Italy. Um, these are these are traditionally those teams that kind of float between the upper division and Division 1A. So, uh, well, our intrepid reporter Travis had took a nice nap today. So, good on you, man. But yeah, so that's the World Championships. The United States has done relatively well in this. They're 4-0-1. Once we get into the medal rounds, uh, I think they should avoid the first round, and while Kazakhstan, Germany, Latvia, and Canada should continue to fight in that first round of the medal round, or they may have all 8 teams. I haven't really studied what they're going to do with the two relegation level teams in each division, or they may just do four. Finland versus Italy and U.S. versus Norway, and dive through that. But anyway, if you want to watch the U.S. games, they're on NHL Network, and they're entertaining. I really like them. So, um, but that's pretty much it. They're on early in the day because I think what is it? Yeah, they're being played in Latvia, so it's on early. Like the U.S. versus Kazakhstan game I watched the other day was on at like 9 a.m. So if you want to watch a little daytime hockey, there you go. Anyway, that's pretty much what we've got for the week. I will I'll probably record the episode because I'm going to Chicago at the end of the week. We'll either record it or we'll just go live on Thursday night and talk about the early part of the second round and have fun with that. So thanks everyone for joining us, and I will talk to everyone next week. Bye, everybody.